Penn State couldn't be in a better spot, returning its entire backfield with Drew Allar, Nicholas Singleton, Kaytron Allen. Now they just got to figure out who's going to back them up.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked on to Penn State football, and thank you so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day. My name is Zach Seyko, and I am your host of the show, credentialed media member for both Penn State football and Penn State wrestling. Today's show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. And a big thank you to the everydayers. Friendly reminder, let me know your thoughts down in the comment section as we are talking training camp battles. Training camp starts this week on Wednesday. It's great to officially have college football back. So we're talking about all the premium training camp battles here. What's on the line with QB2, RB3, starting right guard, right tackle. I'll explain that one. Tight end, and then some other surprises on the defensive side of the football that we have to get to later on in the show. I want to begin with QB2 because who's going to back up Drew Allar? Well, Penn State fans certainly remember what it meant and how important it was to have a signal caller that was ready to go at any given time with Bo Pribula, but then further back when there wasn't that preparedness when Sean Clifford got hurt. So this time around, Penn State has not one, but two viable options for that quarterback 2 spot. Ethan Grunkemeyer and Jaxon Smolik. Now, I see both of those players as legitimate options at QB2. There isn't one that neither player truly stands out. And what's interesting about these training camp battles is a lot of these are going to carry into the season. They're not going to be decided week 1. They're not going to be decided by the end of training camp. These will probably go through the entirety of the first part of the season up until Oregon. So Jaxon Smolik and Ethan Grunkemeyer, it does not get any closer than this one in my opinion. Jaxon Smolik had a great blue-white game. Ethan Grunkemeyer is the player that most people look at and say, well, he's got the higher ceiling. That's the guy they need to go with. He was the highly touted 4-star prospect, finished as a top 10 QB in the high school recruiting rankings for the most part. You got to go with him, right? But who's better right now? Not who's better in the future, who's better right now? I got to say it's Jaxon Smolik. That 1 extra year of eligibility, or that 1 year of being at the college level, I think puts Smolik just ahead enough of Grunkemeyer at this point in time. But I will say Grunkemeyer does have a little athleticism, but not by much. Smolik's quietly, subtly, a solid mobile quarterback. He can move. He can move outside of the pocket. He can extend plays. Kind of like that Sean. Hey, they both wear 14. Kind of like that little, subtle Sean Clifford athleticism. That's what I would compare it to. Ethan Grunkemeyer, I think, is a better straight line runner, but not much separates them there. They can both move. So it's that 1 year extra of veteran experience that Smolik has at this point in time that I say he's QB2, but that's a training camp battle that's honestly, this one's not going to be decided until next offseason when there's a QB1 battle that emerges from this. Now let's talk about RB3. Quinton Martin, Corey Smith, Cam Wallace. This is a 3-man battle for the running back spot behind Nicholas Singleton and Kaytron Allen. Those guys are co-starters. They're both RB1. You're going to see a lot of 2 running back sets because of the depth that Penn State has behind them. And you'll see Nicholas Singleton and Kaytron Allen involved in the passing game as well. So that RB3 spot is extremely important with what Andy Kotelnicki wants to do this season. If you're going to run more 2 running back sets, more 21, 22 personnel, you better have the backup running backs ready to go. Corey Smith and Quinton Martin, both redshirt freshmen. Martin dealt with some bumps and bruises, and that actually opened the door for Corey Smith to gain some ground. Because developmentally, Martin was ahead of Smith. Actually, and for what it's worth, Cam Wallace was ahead of both of them, but then sustained a serious leg injury last season. We saw it. It's unfortunate. He's back. He's practicing. That's That's the great part about this, is the comeback by Cam Wallace. So I don't want to disregard him. I do think, because of how serious the leg injury looked and seemed to be, that I put him on the outside looking in until he goes through the motions a little more and really gets back to his top form. Right now, I think this is Quinton Martin's battle to lose. He's the bigger, stronger back. He's not a power back like a Kaytron Allen would be, but he's all around and he's a little more difficult to stop. Corey Smith. Quinton Martin, Corey Smith. Combine the two together there. Corey Smith, faster, shiftier. He's got a smaller build, but I like the way they complement each other. That is a nice future 1-2 punch for Penn State that's going to carry the baton of these elite running back tandems, these elite running back duos. Penn State's backfield is in good hands when that baton is officially passed to Martin and Smith together. But if we're talking about who's next up, I think both of them are going to be cycled in, if I'm being honest, with Quinton Martin getting a few more snaps, but both of them are effective as pass catchers. I think Quinton Martin would be a better blocker, and I think that's what maybe gives him an advantage over Corey Smith. Again, that goes with the bigger, stronger build that he has, and it's just genetics at the end of the day. That's nothing. It's not to knock Corey Smith, but it is an attribute that Quinton Martin is better at. So with that being said, Martin is going to be the 3A. Smith will be the 3B. And as Cam Wallace continues to ramp back up, really get to that top form, that 110% that I've mentioned, he's going to rotate in too, because he was the true RB3 going into last season, and then the unfortunate injury. So watch RB3 just over the course and see how that rotation continues. But I think for the most part, you really can't go wrong if you're Penn State with Martin or Smith backing up Singleton and Allen, because they have their own unique skill sets and they're both really good pass catchers at the same time. And that's going to be important in this version of Penn State's offense. Now, there are some battles on the line of scrimmage. Tight end, with Tyler Warren gone, well, you're going to have a timeshare at tight end, and who's going to get the most reps? Khalil Dinkins, Luke Reynolds, former 5-star tight end, or is it this one other player that is also coming back from injury that some people, maybe they've forgotten about him? We'll talk about that, plus who's going to start at right guard, coming up next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. And today's show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? Well, with Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch Money puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, but giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center where you can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. And I think that's the best part of it, is being able to track everything that you're spending money on. Because sometimes you can lose track of things. Subscriptions, if you dine out a lot, package deliveries, right? All of those things you can manage seamlessly within Monarch Money. And if you collaborate your finances, if you manage money with a partner, that's easy with Monarch Money. So you can track all of that together with a partner. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for, get this, 50% off your first year. That's right, 50% off your first year over at monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. There's going to be a timeshare at tight end, but it's not just a two-man battle. No, there is Khalil Dinkins, Luke Reynolds, one other player. We're also going to talk about right guard. Everyone pencils in Cooper Cousins, but there's actually another player that could be an interesting part of the way the dynamic looks on the offensive line. We're going to talk about that and then get into the secondary to wrap up the show. Tight end, Luke Reynolds. He's the 5-star tight end, but Khalil Dinkins is the crafty veteran, if you will, right? I know that's reserved particularly for baseball, but Khalil Dinkins can do a lot of things. He can be that receiving threat. I would argue, and this comes from Drew Allar, this comes from other Penn State coaches, Khalil Dinkins is easily the best blocker in the tight end room. And you could say, okay, he's not an offensive lineman, but he plays like it sometimes. He really plays as a sixth offensive lineman. Khalil Dinkins does have the veteran experience. We know that Luke Reynolds dealt with something. He was held out of spring camp for a portion of time. Now, that's not to be concerned about. But what I'm pointing out is Luke Reynolds missed some valuable time, catching up developmentally and really putting himself ahead of the game. I like Luke Reynolds a lot. I think he's going to have a breakout season in the passing game and somebody that Penn State's going to rely on down the stretch of the season. But if I had to say, hey, who's tight end 1? Who's tight end 2? You're going to see Khalil Dinkins be that starting tight end, be tight end 1 for the most part because of the complete game that he has. Luke Reynolds is still a true sophomore. He's going into his second season. We're going to need to see more out of him, and he'll get better and I think start to eat into some of those snaps. But remember, this is Andy Kotelnicki's offense. Penn State's going to run a lot of 2 tight end sets, so kind of like how Singleton and Allen are co-starters, you're going to have Khalil Dinkins and Luke Reynolds, but when they do shift to 11 personnel, you'll see Khalil Dinkins, I think, more often than not, at least to start the season as opposed to Luke Reynolds. Let's talk about another player, too, that's going to get into that timeshare, and that is Andrew Rappleyea. Don't think that this is 60-40 Dinkins and Reynolds. No. Rappleyea is coming back from injury, so he will have to ramp up and progress and everything like that, similarly to Cam Wallace. But as he gets going, this might be more of an even timeshare as the season goes on. Rappleyea can block. Well, we know that for a fact. They'd use him as an extra blocker in the first season of his career here at Penn State. So it's just about getting back to 100%, getting back to game speed, getting acclimated with everything. And then Andy Kotelnicki has the luxury of running 3 tight end sets. We're going to see some different uncharacteristic for the most part in this modern day and age of football. But don't be surprised if we see something funky, maybe a 3 tight end, 2 running back set, because Penn State has that luxury. I'm not saying they're going to break that out every single time, but and they're going to be able to pass out of that because all of Dinkins, Reynolds, and Rappleyea can catch the football. They're not just extra blockers. They are all receiving threats. And it's great that they can block on the side, right? That's the whole point of a tight end. So the tight end room, one of Penn State's biggest strengths because of the depth they have with Tyler Warren moving on. So they don't have that superstar X factor that defenses spend sleepless nights trying to figure out how do we stop Tyler Warren. Now you got to figure out how to limit any of these 3 when they're on the football field. So Andy Kotelnicki does have some tricks up his sleeve because of the personnel and the depth that he has at key position groups. Offensive line, Penn State returning 80% of its starting offensive line. You lose Sal Wormley, but maybe you could extend that a little bit to 90%? I don't know if it's 100, but you are returning 5 starting caliber players with, let's go from left to right. Drew Shelton, Vanga Ioane, Nick Dawkins, right guard opens up. Right tackle, you had both Anthony Donkoh and Nolan Rucci playing at an elite level, and I do mean that. When Nolan Rucci came in and was the regular starter, Anthony Donkoh was better for the most part, and you could argue that Donkoh at points in time was consistently the best overall offensive lineman. Other people have said that it's a lot closer now. I think Drew Shelton has taken a major step forward. Vanga Ioane, all of these guys are going to get drafted and at least make it to a pro team, right? Nick Dawkins, as that veteran center, comes back to anchor the offensive line, be that leader again. People don't realize how important that is. The leadership that Nick Dawkins possesses, in addition to the skill, but people don't realize the X's and O's part of it, of how smart Dawkins is reading a defense as that starting center. So right guard and right tackle are kind of by proxy together. I got to think that Nolan Rucci, now he did miss some time this spring, missed valuable time, but Anthony Donkoh is still a similar situation to Cam Wallace and Andrew Rappleyea, where he is working his way back. If and when Donkoh gets to truly 100%, and it sounds like there are no limitations here, James Franklin prefaced he had a summer press conference, for those who don't remember, and talked about how, and Anthony Donkoh is going to be ready to go. Andrew Rappleyea is going to be ready to go. Tony Rojas, there's no limitations there. But you still got to get back to game speed, right? When you have a long-term injury or you deal with a procedure of some sort, you still want to get back to where you feel comfortable. So I could see a scenario where Cooper Cousins maybe wins the job right away. But don't be surprised if Anthony Donkoh, maybe you slide him inside to guard. And Cooper Cousins, I mean, he could be a backup at center. He could be a backup at guard. But it really does depend which group gives you the best chemistry together, because it might not even be the best 5 offensive linemen purely individually. It might be which group of 5 gives you the best together, because offensive line chemistry absolutely matters. So if you find a combination where it's Rucci and Donkoh together on that right side of the offensive line work together better than Cousins and Rucci or Cousins and Donkoh, you're going to go with that. So those are the battles that are unfolding on the line of scrimmage that maybe not enough people are going to talk about quite yet. Don't just automatically pencil in Cooper Cousins is what I'm saying, because you can't just bench Anthony Donkoh. If I can sit here and confidently say, hey, when this guy's healthy, he is one of the best, if not the best overall offensive lineman on the team. You don't just make him a backup because Nolan Rucci caught some fire, caught lightning in a bottle at the end of the season. Donkoh has the ability to move in, to kick inside to guard. And like I said, it would not shock me because of where he is. Again, he's a year ahead developmentally than Cooper Cousins. I know Cooper Cousins was the former 5-star, but not consensus, but he was a former 5-star. But Donkoh, just because he was a 3-star in high school, that none of that means anything. He has developed so well at Penn State, and despite that injury, like I said, he's still one of the best offensive linemen, if not the best, when he is at his healthiest. So watch that right guard spot, because we could see Donkoh kick in from right tackle to right guard, and then you have an all-veteran offensive line. Again, the fact that Penn State, one way or another, is going to have to keep a serious talent out of that first 5. Whether it is Cooper Cousins, who is ready to start, I think is ready to go at that guard spot. But then how do you keep Anthony Donkoh on the sideline, right? So I expect it to be Shelton, Ioane, Dawkins, Donkoh, Rucci. But we'll see. That's why they're having the training camp battle, right? Because Donkoh is kicking in from tackle to guard, if that's going to happen. Cousins, we'll see. If Cousins is, he's been prepping an interior offensive line for a while, center or guard, we'll see if he's ready to go. But I don't think, like I said, Penn State has that luxury. I don't know that there's necessarily a wrong answer, but there is a more correct answer. Now, secondary gets really interesting. There's a cornerback 2 spot up for grabs. The slot cornerback, strong safety. There's so much, not necessarily uncertainty, but so many questions that Penn State has to answer with its starters in the back end of the defense. We're going to talk about that and one battle on the defensive line to wrap up the show here on Locked On Nittany Lions. And this episode is brought to you by Gametime. We've all been there, logging on early, waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot to a show that you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories and not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Gametime comes in. Gametime makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. And get this, prices on the app actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% with killer last-minute deals. And it's not just concerts, it's sporting events, of course, comedy events, theater events, you name it, all available on Gametime. Penn State football tickets are available on Gametime. That's right, you can get tickets to Penn State football games. And if you've never been to Beaver Stadium, well, one of the cool features about Gametime is you get to see your point of view ahead of time, so you're not second guessing yourself. If you've never been to Beaver Stadium, that is a handy feature. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create that account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Seems like the whole secondary is up for grabs, or at least that's those starters. Other than A.J. Harris and Zach Wheatley, remember, this is a 4-2-5, so there's going to be a lot of battles that are figured out along the way. Nickel cornerback, so the slot cornerback, CB2, who's going to line up across from A.J. Harris, and strong safety. And one player is going to be involved in multiple position battles here, I think. But let's start with cornerback 2, because Elliott Washington generated a lot of buzz, and then there's another player that didn't generate maybe as much notoriety because, hey, you see on social media, who's winning the winter workouts, right? And Elliott Washington had a complete clean sweep with 6 out of 6 victories. Well, when I go to spring football practices and then you just hear James Franklin and you hear Terry Smith talk about the players that they work with closely, now, Davian Collins, I think, is really going to push Elliott Washington for cornerback 2. And Penn State really likes to operate with a co-starter mentality at cornerback number 2. So you have the guy that's over on the other side. Joey Porter Jr., Kalen King, now A.J. Harris. That's cornerback 1. There's no rotation. And then the way that they operate on the other side of the football field, they have 2 players that will rotate in pretty frequently. So that's what Penn State's looking for, is a clear-cut starter at the 1, 2 co-starters that can rotate in pretty frequently. And just because one's starting doesn't mean the other's not going to play or be on the football field, because Elliott Washington and Davian Collins are very close. Like I said, these training camp battles are not going to solve themselves by week 1. This is particularly a training camp battle that is going to go back and forth all the way, because Oregon, you better have your guys in the secondary ready to go against Oregon. I know that they lost the leading returning receiver in Evan Stewart, but you got to have everybody situated by that point in time, because there's still going to be an effective passing offense despite having to break in, hey, new quarterback, new running back, offensive lineman. You get my point. It's still going to be an elite team, so Penn State better be ready for them. I like Davian Collins a lot. I will not discount Elliott Washington. You win the winter workouts. That shows grit, tenacity, the ability to show up on any given day. Hey, maybe you're not feeling your best, because it's understandable if 4 out of 5, 4 or 5, you don't win all of them, but a clean sweep, that shows me that Elliott Washington has turned the corner here. But Davian Collins has been quietly developing, player that transferred in from Mississippi State. He's physical. I like Collins a lot. I like the way that he plays the game of football, his personality. He's going to be tough too. He's going to be gritty. Those 2 players, again, Penn State can't go wrong. They can't go wrong. So then we get to the slot cornerback spot. Zion Tracy missed spring ball with an injury. He's going to be coming back. I imagine that he's going to be the starter. King Mack is also involved in this battle as well, but we're going to talk about strong safety, and that's the player that's going to be involved. And since Zion Tracy has been an effective cornerback, there's not really much that he needs to prove. It's the talent that King Mack brings back since transfer. I mean, he was at Penn State, transferred to Alabama. Now he's back at Penn State. So it's the fact that King Mack is really good as a defensive back purely. It's his talent alone that pushes Zion Tracy. It's not because Zion Tracy is missing something or it's questionable, but because Zion Tracy is effective, he's going to be healthy going into training camp. That's the one where I say, okay, I can circle this one, and it's because of Zion Tracy that you can take King Mack and put him over at strong safety and push Dejon Lane. I don't know that I have that same confidence in Dejon Lane to take over as a regular starter. Now, he is the bigger player. King Mack is 5'9", 5'10". Dejon Lane is 6'2", 210 pounds. That's the player that you want at strong safety. But again, the talent that Mack possesses. I mean, he was supposed to be one of those players waiting in line and then went off to Alabama. Now he's kind of have to regain his presence here as a player in the secondary. I'm going to side with the veteran experience. Now, does that not mean that Lane's going to play? But I think initially, early on, if we see a secondary that's A.J. Harris, again, you can't go wrong. It's going to be Collins and Washington to an extent. But I got to lean Collins if I'm making the choice, just from what I've seen. Then in the back end of this, you have Zach Wheatley, who's going to be that free safety, of course. He's going to anchor that back part of the defense. And then it's King Mack and Zion Tracy in the slot cornerback spot. Okay, there you go. And then you have Dejon Lane rotate in when you need him. Maybe on a clear-cut third down type of play, you get a bigger body safety in there. But King Mack, I think because of his versatility and ability to defend against the pass, you might see that a little more. You'll see Mack be the player that rotates in pretty frequently. So secondary is very important to figure out here in training camp. I want to go to the defensive line. I had one circled. I do want to make a note. DT4, that second defensive tackle. Again, there are other position battles that you could go, who's going to be a backup wide receiver and stuff like that. But the ones that are most important to highlight, I do want to make note of defensive tackle 4 that after Zane Durant, Alonzo Ford, and Xavier Gilliam, it's anybody's battle at that point in time between, who knows who steps up? Owen Wafel or a Ty Blanding or DeAndre Cook, Liam Andrews. Like I said, everybody and their brother are battling for that 4th DT spot. So just keep an eye on that. There's so many players involved. We'll see who emerges from that scrum. That backup defensive end to Zariah Fisher. That's an interesting one. Most people would probably pencil in because it was supposed to be Max Granville. Max Granville was going to be the guy. But he's hurt. He's out for the season. So now, who does Penn State turn to? Well, okay, the obvious choice, or if you ask most Penn State fans that know the depth chart pretty inside and out, Jalen Harvey. Jalen Harvey makes a lot of sense. Coveted 4-star once upon a time. Put him in. That makes tons of sense. I think Malachi Williams is going to push for that spot as well. They were both coveted 4-stars. I don't know that there's much that separates them at this point in time. Now, if I had to make a choice, if I had to make a prediction, I'd probably say Jalen Harvey, but it would not surprise me if Malachi Williams ends up if he has a better training camp, take some of those snaps and reps away from Jalen Harvey. They're both coming in with similar pedigrees. Pass rushing defensive ends. They put on the weight. They developed. Year 2, so one of them's going to have to break out. So we could see them rotate in pretty evenly just for Penn State to create a little more depth behind Zariah Fisher, someone who's dealt with injuries, multiple injuries, serious injuries over the course of his career. So you need to have that insurance. It's not Zariah Fisher's fault. Injuries happen. I get it. But you also need to have that certainty in case it does happen again. So weak side defensive end, that backup spot, very important for Penn State to figure out, especially with what Fisher's dealt with. And now you don't have Max Granville. So Jalen Harvey, Malachi Williams, that is one of note going into training camp. And will definitely take a long time to figure out, not by week 1. That's where we'll finish things here on this edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. Which position battle are you most intrigued by? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments section. Thank you for checking out this episode. Thank you to the everydayers out there for making us a part of your regular routine. If you're not an everydayer, become one. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcasts for the latest conversations around all your favorite Penn State sports teams. Football, wrestling, basketball. We talk recruiting here. It's all right here daily. And we're going to have more previews, season previews, bring on some guests to talk about their thoughts on Penn State. Figure out, Penn State being a national title contender. Should they be the favorite? Are they in the mix? We're going to get to the bottom of all of that as football is back. It is a month away, and all the coverage is going to be right here on Locked On Nittany Lions.